Hey beautiful, have you considered subscribing to our channel? Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
It was 3:04 a.m. when I jolted awake to the sharp, rapid pounding at my front door. For a second I thought I was dreaming. The kind of dream where your heart races but your body stays frozen. Then came the second round of knocks, harder this time, frantic, almost theatrical. I sat up, the darkness of my bedroom pressing in around me, ears ringing with the sudden adrenaline. Who the hell was banging on my door at this hour? I stumbled to the hallway, grabbing my hoodie off the chair, the floor cold beneath my bare feet. My dog Murphy barked once, then shrank back, ears low, uneasy. Through the narrow frosted window beside the front door, I could make out the silhouette of someone shifting from one foot to the other. Still half asleep, I flicked on the porch light and cracked open the door. There she stood, arms crossed tight across a leopard print robe, disheveled hair twisted into a messy bun, face twisted in an expression of righteous fury. Karen. Now, I didn't actually know her name was Karen at the time. But even before she opened her mouth, I knew. You could feel it. The entitlement radiated off her like heat from asphalt. Her eyes, wide with exaggerated disbelief, scanned me up and down. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" she snapped before I could even say a word. I blinked. "It's 3 in the morning?" She scoffed as if my answer had personally offended her. "Exactly. And you need to move your truck. Now." My brain, still shaking off sleep, struggled to compute. "Excuse me?" "Your truck," she repeated, gesturing wildly toward my driveway. "It's blocking the flow of the neighborhood. You can't just park like that." I stepped out onto the porch, bewildered. My truck, a 2019 Silverado, was parked squarely in my own driveway, exactly where it had been for the last 3 years. Not on the street. Not on the sidewalk. My driveway. "I'm sorry," I said slowly, trying to mask the irritation creeping into my voice. "But that's my property. It's always parked there." Karen took a dramatic breath, like she was preparing to deliver a TED Talk. "Look, I've lived here for 12 years. This is a peaceful community. Your vehicle is massive. It doesn't match the tone of the neighborhood. It's an eyesore. And frankly, it wakes me up every morning when you leave." Now I was wide awake. "I leave at 7:30. Like most people going to work." She smiled thinly, like she was trying to appear reasonable. "And yet here we are. It's about consideration. Community standards." I laughed, not because it was funny but because the absurdity of the situation had finally hit me. "You woke me up at 3 in the morning, to complain about my truck being in my driveway?" She didn't flinch. "I knocked because you ignored my notes." "Notes?" Then I remembered, 2 days ago I'd found a post-it stuck to my windshield that read, "Please consider parking somewhere less disruptive." I had thought it was a joke. I'd thrown it away without a second thought. "I didn't think that was serious," I admitted. "Well, now you know I am. Move it, or I will call the police." I blinked again, half expecting a hidden camera crew to pop out from behind the bushes. "You're calling 911, because of my truck?" She crossed her arms tighter. "Yes. You're refusing to comply with a reasonable request. And frankly, I don't feel safe." That last part hit like a punch to the gut. "You don't feel safe?" I echoed, stunned. "You came onto my property. You knocked on my door. I haven't even raised my voice." Karen didn't respond. Instead, she whipped out her phone and started dialing. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. She turned away slightly as she spoke, voice rising just enough for me to hear. "Yes, I'd like to report a disturbance. My neighbor is being aggressive and threatening, and he's refusing to move a large vehicle that's blocking access to the neighborhood." My mouth hung open. I felt a strange combination of disbelief and fear bubbling in my chest. This couldn't be real. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But I also knew how these calls could play out, especially when the person making them knew how to sound scared. Knew how to weaponize words like aggressive and threatening. I pulled out my phone and started recording. If the police were coming, I wanted everything documented. Karen ended the call and turned back to me triumphant. "They'll be here shortly. I hope for your sake you'll do the smart thing and move it now." I stared at her, then at my truck, bathed in the pale glow of the porch light. Parked perfectly. Motionless. Innocent. I didn't say another word. I stepped back inside, shut the door and locked it. Through the window, I watched as she stood there on the sidewalk, arms still crossed, bouncing slightly on her heels like a child who just tattled on a sibling and was waiting for mom to come dole out punishment. 10 minutes later, I saw the red and blue lights bouncing off the walls of my living room. The officers approached with cautious professionalism. I met them on the porch again, phone still recording. She said I threatened her. I told them I didn't. I just refused to move my truck from my own driveway. They asked for ID. I complied. One of them glanced at the driveway, squinting at the truck as if searching for some violation. Another went to speak with Karen, who launched into an exaggerated retelling of the situation, full of sighs and hand gestures. The officers regrouped, huddled for a moment, then returned. No laws broken here, the taller one said. You're parked legally on your own property. We're not going to take any action. I nodded, relief washing through me but not satisfaction. Karen stood nearby, fuming, arms stiff at her sides. Just a heads up, the other officer added. If stuff like this keeps happening, it might be a good idea to document everything. Just in case. Already on it, I said, holding up my phone. They gave a small nod and left. Karen didn't say another word as she turned and walked back across the street, bathrobe flapping like a cape in the wind. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the truck that had suddenly become a symbol of war. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. But neither was I. The morning after the 3 a.m. police visit, I half expected Karen to have come to her senses, maybe even leave an apology note out of embarrassment. Instead, she went nuclear. It started with a post on the neighborhood app. A long, passive-aggressive screed titled Asterisk, concerning disturbances from a neighbor's oversized vehicle. Asterisk it read like a manifesto. She claimed a new resident was disrupting the harmony of the neighborhood by parking an obnoxious, commercial-grade truck in a way that endangered children and compromised aesthetic standards. She included a blurry, zoomed-in photo of my Silverado taken at night, cropped just enough to hide the address but not enough to leave doubt. The comments filled up fast. Most people didn't bite. A few offered polite neutrality. But a handful chimed in with, "I've noticed that truck too, and I thought it was a contractor." That was all Karen needed. Over the next few days, the energy shifted. I could feel it in the way neighbors looked at me when I pulled into my driveway. A few stopped waving. One lady who used to walk her golden retriever past my house each morning, now crossed the street half a block early. It wasn't open hostility, it was worse. It was that quiet, suburban cold shoulder that says, "You're not one of us." By Thursday there was a folded note under my windshield wiper. "Please move your vehicle. You are bringing down the property value of this block." I kept it, took a photo, filed it in a new folder on my phone, Karen Evidence. Then came the garbage. One morning I stepped outside to find an open trash bag dumped across my lawn, soggy cereal boxes, loose banana peels, used tissues. At first, I figured a raccoon had gotten into someone's bin, until I spotted the address label on one of the pizza boxes. Karen's house number. I didn't confront her. I just cleaned it up and added another photo to the folder. I tried to go about life as usual, but every time I stepped outside, I could feel her eyes on me. Behind curtains. Peeking through her blinds. Sometimes when I'd come home late, I'd see her standing in her upstairs window, silhouetted by a soft blue light, watching like a gargoyle waiting to strike. I spoke to a few other neighbors, people I used to chat with when mowing the lawn or walking Murphy. They gave me polite smiles, avoided eye contact. One of them, Mr. Delaney, an old man with a Marine Corps bumper sticker and a fondness for whiskey sours, pulled me aside and whispered, "She's been running this place for years. Used to be on the HOA board. Got old Nancy fined $500 for putting up Halloween decorations too early. Just keep your head down." I didn't respond. Not because I agreed, but because I was realizing how deep her roots went. She wasn't just one nosy neighbor with too much time on her hands. She was a tyrant with a following. That weekend, an official-looking envelope arrived in my mailbox. It was from the HOA. Inside was a citation notice, violation, improper vehicle storage. According to the document, my truck was in breach of neighborhood aesthetic guidelines and would result in a $75 fine if not addressed within 10 days. I read it 3 times. I had reviewed the HOA rules when I moved in. There was nothing about vehicles parked in driveways unless they were non-operational or clearly commercial, neither of which applied to my truck. It was clean, well-maintained, and had no logos or company markings. This was fiction. Fabricated, biased enforcement. I sent an email to the HOA board asking for clarification. A week later, I received a curt response saying the rule had been recently updated. No notice. No vote. I started documenting everything. I bought a second security camera and angled it to cover the sidewalk where Karen liked to hover. I saved every digital post, every note, every screenshot. I dated everything. I considered talking to her again, maybe appealing to reason, asking her why this mattered so much, but every time I imagined the conversation, I heard her smug, calm voice saying, "I don't feel safe," and saw those flashing red and blue lights. Instead, I waited. I let her keep pushing. She began leaving more comments on the app, claiming I revved my engine late at night, that I left oil stains in the street, that my truck obstructed the view of oncoming traffic. All lies. And the worst part? She was smart about it. She never mentioned me by name. Never enough for a defamation case. Just enough to make me look like a careless outsider. A threat. It reached a tipping point when I came home one day to find a yellow flyer taped to my front door. An HOA meeting notice. Karen had personally added a handwritten note at the bottom. Asterisk, please attend. We'll be addressing ongoing property concerns. Asterisk. I knew what that meant. She was making her move. Pushing for an official complaint. Maybe even trying to escalate to force compliance. I stood on my porch, staring at the note, a sick twist in my stomach. I wasn't afraid of her. Not exactly. But I understood her now. She didn't want quiet. She didn't want order. She wanted obedience. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Murphy asleep at my feet and opened the folder on my laptop titled, Karen. It was bigger than I realized. Weeks worth of timestamps, videos, voice memos, screenshots. All of it organized, cataloged. Her patterns. Her tactics. She thought I was just some quiet guy with a truck. That I'd cave. That I'd roll over the way everyone else had. But I'd finally reached the part of the story where the victim stops being polite and starts being strategic. I wasn't going to fight her with rage. I was going to destroy her with truth. The night of the HOA meeting, the community clubhouse was buzzing with polite tension. Rows of foldable chairs lined the beige carpeted room, filled with familiar faces pretending not to glance at me as I walked in. Karen was already there, seated near the front, clipboard in hand, lips pursed like she was ready to recite scripture. She wore a tailored blazer over her blouse, a statement necklace, and a smug air that suggested she thought this night was hers. I took a seat in the back, quiet, unassuming. My phone was in my lap, recording. Hidden in my coat pocket, a flash drive with every bit of evidence I had collected. I wasn't here to plead. I was here to expose. The meeting began with the usual formalities, budget approvals, landscaping proposals, a short round of applause for someone who had painted their mailbox a community-approved shade of beige. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. Karen stood. She didn't ask for the floor. She simply took it. "I'd like to address an ongoing disturbance," she said, her voice syrupy sweet but slicing through the room like a scalpel. "It's something many of us have noticed. A resident, newer I believe, has been ignoring both written and verbal requests to maintain acceptable community standards. I'm speaking of course about the oversized truck parked prominently in full view, day and night, contributing to noise pollution, obstructed views and frankly devalued aesthetics." Some heads nodded. Others tilted, unsure. She saw her opening and pushed further. "I have spoken to this individual personally, kindly I might add, and even involved law enforcement when his behavior became erratic and combative." That word again. Erratic. It hung in the air like poison gas. I watched a few brows furrow, lips purse. The insinuation was clear. "I propose," she continued, "that we fine him daily until the vehicle is either moved or removed. And if that fails, we escalate through the proper channels." Silence. For a second I could almost hear the pulse pounding in my ears. Then the HOA president, a mild-mannered guy named Craig who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, cleared his throat and said, "Would the resident like to respond?" I stood slowly. Calm. Collected. Every eye turned toward me and I felt Karen's gaze like daggers in my spine. "My name is Derek Lang," I said. "I moved into the neighborhood 3 years ago. My truck is parked in my own driveway, never on the street, and in full compliance with the HOA agreement I signed when I bought my home." I clicked the remote in my hand and turned toward the projector on the wall. My PowerPoint loaded. I've been recording the events of the past several weeks. What started as a ridiculous complaint has become targeted harassment. Let's begin with the 911 call made on March 2nd at 3:04 a.m. I played the audio, Karen's voice calm and faux shaken, claiming I was threatening her. Then I played the footage from my security camera, showing our interaction from start to finish. No aggression. No yelling. Just her escalating a non-issue into a police visit. Gasps rippled through the room. I continued. "Here's a copy of the neighborhood post accusing me of endangering children. Here are the screenshots of comments suggesting I rev my engine at night." I clicked again. "And here's the footage from that same week. Me leaving for work at exactly 7:31 a.m., engine running for no more than 15 seconds. I moved methodically, calmly, showing each note left on my windshield, the garbage dumped on my lawn, the altered HOA citation with no record of a formal rule change. This is targeted, personal, and it's affecting my safety and my reputation. Karen's face had gone pale. Her mouth was a tight line, eyes flicking around the room searching for backup. None came. One board member, an older woman with thick glasses and a librarian's demeanor, raised her hand. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, addressing Karen by her last name. "Is all of this true?" Karen stood, arms stiff at her sides. "This is being blown out of proportion. I acted in the community's interest. That truck is not against any current rule," I interrupted. "And for what it's worth, I had it detailed yesterday. The only eyesore here is the behavior it's exposed." A chuckle rippled from somewhere in the back. Craig rubbed his temples. "We'll take this matter under advisement. No further action will be taken until the board reviews all evidence. That was the bureaucratic version of this is bad and we need time to cover our butts." As the meeting closed and people started to file out, a few neighbors approached me for the first time in weeks. Some offered apologetic smiles. Others gave quiet nods. A few muttered things like, "Didn't know it was that bad," and "You handled that well." Karen left in silence. No clipboard. No eye contact. Just a swift, tight-lipped walk out the double doors. But I wasn't finished. Later that night, I uploaded a video compilation to a public neighborhood forum, one she didn't control. I titled it, "When a Neighbor Weaponizes the HOA." It was clean. No insults. Just facts. Timeline, documents, video proof, and a closing note. We all want peace. But peace doesn't come through intimidation. By morning it had over 100 shares. Someone turned it into a meme. Karen's face mid-complaint captioned, "Calls cops on a truck. Gets wrecked by PowerPoint." Justice had started. But the final blow hadn't landed yet. Karen didn't come outside for 3 days. Her blinds stayed shut. Her porch lights off. The clipboard that had once been an extension of her arm was nowhere in sight. But the silence wasn't victory, it was the calm before the storm. And I knew it. On the 4th morning I found another letter taped to my door. This time it wasn't anonymous. It was signed Karen Whitaker, printed in overly formal font, like she'd typed it on legal stationery to make it feel official. She accused me of slander, defamation, and public character assassination, demanding I take down the video or face legal action. I read it once calmly. Then I laughed. Karen had underestimated one thing: I wasn't afraid of her anymore. And I certainly wasn't alone. The neighborhood had changed. I could feel it. People waved again. One woman left a bag of cookies at my doorstep with a note that said, "Sorry you've been dealing with all that. We like your truck." The man with the golden retriever started walking past my house again, even paused to say hello. Mr. Delaney raised a glass to me from his porch and barked, "Nice work, soldier." Karen was losing her grip. But losing power doesn't sit well with people who've made control their identity. And she had one more card to play. A week after the HOA meeting, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, I pulled into my driveway to find 2 city inspectors parked out front, umbrellas in hand, clipboards already scribbled on. One of them, a balding guy in a neon vest, approached me as I stepped out of the truck. "Derek Lang?" "Yeah. We received a formal complaint about unauthorized property modifications. Fence height violation, non-permitted exterior fixtures, and improper vehicle use." He gestured toward my security cameras. The truck. Even the small flower bed I'd planted along the driveway. I stood there, rain dripping from my jacket, heart pounding. This wasn't petty anymore. It was systemic, coordinated. And it was the biggest mistake she ever made. Because this time, she didn't just come after me. She tried to use government power as her weapon, and that made it personal. I showed the inspectors the permits I did have. Explained the origin of the flower bed. Offered to walk them through every change I'd made since moving in. One of them nodded, looking increasingly annoyed. The other muttered something about wasting city resources. They left 20 minutes later. No citations. No fines. Just a recommendation to keep records handy, in case more complaints came in. That night I called my lawyer. The next morning we filed for a cease and desist order against Karen for harassment and misuse of civic resources. We included every piece of evidence. The 3 a.m. 911 call. The fake HOA violation. the falsified neighborhood posts, and now the false city complaints. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to a local reporter who had been covering stories about HOA abuse and suburban power struggles. I shared everything, every detail, every clip, every ugly truth. The story ran the next weekend. Retaliation in the suburbs, how one woman tried to weaponize a neighborhood. They didn't use her last name, but they didn't have to. The community knew exactly who it was. The comments flooded in, a tidal wave of empathy, support, and rage. Former neighbors of Karen's chimed in from other towns. One guy wrote, "She got me fined $200 for having wind chimes. She's been doing this for years." Karen's image, once tightly polished and meticulously managed, cracked like glass under the pressure. Rumors swirled. Someone posted an old HOA newsletter she'd edited, filled with suspicious amendments made without votes. Another neighbor came forward with her own video, from 2 years ago, of Karen berating a teen for skateboarding too close to her driveway. She wasn't just exposed. She was dismantled. And then, on a perfect sunny morning, I saw it. A moving truck in front of her house. No clipboard. No glare through the blinds. Just a for sale sign and a quiet crew loading boxes into the back of a rented truck. She stood on the porch once, arms crossed, face expressionless as she watched her rain crumble. She didn't look at me, but I was standing on my driveway, arms folded, coffee in hand. Just watching. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very thing she tried to eliminate, my truck, was now the thing she had to drive past one last time on her way out. And she did. The truck idled in her driveway for a moment. Then she got in the passenger seat, and just like that, Karen was gone. No apology. No confession. Just defeat. The neighborhood didn't celebrate exactly. But there was a lightness in the air, like we'd all survived something unspoken. The next HOA meeting included a new rule: no unilateral citations without board review. The community app added a moderation feature. And people started talking again. Laughing. Living. As for me, I kept the truck. Sometimes I park it a little closer to the edge of my driveway, just because I can. And every now and then someone walks by and says, "You're the guy from the video, right?" I smile and nod. 'Cause yes, I am. I'm the guy who didn't move his truck. And somehow that made all the difference.